There is a hidden law that governs the flow of heaven's resources into a person's life, yet many walk past it unaware. Most people try to fix their finances by adjusting their budgets, trimming their spending, or chasing more opportunities. Yet the real breakthrough begins in a place deeper than numbers. It begins in the spirit. Financial increase is not first a matter of economy. It is a matter of alignment. When the heart is positioned correctly, doors open that no man can shut. When the inner life is strengthened, supply begins to locate you instead of you chasing it. This is the untaught secret. The outward life only rises to the level of the inward faith. Many have given, prayed, hoped, and waited, yet seen little change. They believe the problem is the size of their seed, but the real issue is often the size of their expectation. The hidden law of supernatural provision states that provision responds to preparation. You receive at the level you prepare for. If your mind is filled with shortage, even abundance will slip through your hands. If your confession is shaped by fear, you silently close the door to what heaven is ready to release. But when your expectation rises, when you speak boldly, think abundantly, and act in faith, supply begins to accelerate toward you. It has no choice. It is a spiritual law. There comes a moment when faith can no longer remain silent or stationary. Faith must speak. Faith must move. Faith must stretch forward. Supernatural provision is not attracted to quiet, passive belief. It is drawn to decisive, faith-filled action. When you sow a seed with conviction, back it with words of life, and anchor it in purpose, something powerful begins to unfold in the unseen realm. Opportunities that were once invisible start appearing. Ideas that were locked inside your mind begin to surface. People you never expected to meet cross your path. It is not coincidence. It is the law of alignment at work. And here is the part few are ever taught. Your words are the steering wheel of your financial future. You cannot speak lack and walk in abundance. You cannot declare fear and expect open heavens. Every time you speak faith, you give heaven permission to move. Every time you declare increase, you widen the channel through which provision flows. The secret is not merely in saying anything. It's in saying the right thing until your heart fully agrees. When your spirit and confession unite, you become unstoppable. But supernatural provision does not come to satisfy selfish desire. It comes to empower divine purpose. Money follows mission. Resources chase vision. When your heart locks onto a purpose greater than yourself, heaven begins to supply you with unusual speed. Doors open that no networking could have produced. Favor appears where there was once resistance. Ideas bloom where there was once confusion. Why? Because purpose activates provision. So lift your eyes today. Refuse to measure your future by your present income. Refuse to let your bank account define your destiny. You are not limited by numbers. You are empowered by spiritual law. Stand tall, speak boldly, sow purposefully, and expect fully. The hidden law is simple. When faith aligns with purpose, provision becomes inevitable. Your supply is not coming. It has already begun moving toward you. All you must do now is align, expect, and receive. The hidden law of supernatural finances begins with understanding that the spiritual realm is the true engine behind the flow of earthly provision. And until a person learns to operate from this deeper dimension, financial struggles often repeat themselves no matter how hard they work or how carefully they plan. What many people fail to recognize is that money does not first respond to effort. It responds to inner alignment, expectation, and spiritual posture. A person can give generously yet still live in shortage if their heart is filled with fear, limitation, or silent doubt, because the unseen world responds not only to what one does but also to what one believes. Real increase begins when the inner life is reshaped, when the mind stops rehearsing loss and starts envisioning abundance, when the tongue stops echoing worry and starts declaring possibility. Provision is spiritual before it becomes physical, and that means a shift must take place inside before anything shifts outside. This hidden law teaches that your financial future is not determined by your job, your background, or your opportunities, but by your expectation, your words, and your purpose. When expectation rises, it acts like a magnet pulling opportunities, ideas, favor, and connections out of the unseen and into your practical life. Where expectation is small, results stay small. Where expectation enlarges, life enlarges with it. This law also reveals that sowing alone is not the key. Many people give offerings or help others, yet they do it without aligning their words and thoughts to the seed they sow. A seed planted in doubt produces hesitation, but a seed planted in faith produces movement. True supernatural provision manifests when giving, believing, speaking, and acting all move in one unified direction. Your words become the steering force of your financial destiny, shaping the road ahead long before your feet ever walk it. When you speak words of increase, confidence, and purpose, you open a channel for resources to flow. When you speak fear, worry, or smallness, you shrink the space through which provision can enter. The law is simple but profound. The mouth reveals what the heart expects, and the heart receives what the mouth repeatedly declares. This is why transformation in finances starts with transformation in confession. Yet there is another layer purpose. Provision is not random, it follows assignment. When your goals are shallow, your supply is small. When your purpose is clear and meaningful, your provision grows to match it. The universe never funds confusion. But when a person becomes anchored in purpose, heaven releases support with precision and speed. This is why those who chase money directly often find it fading, while those who pursue meaningful purpose see money appear as a servant to that mission. The hidden law shows that financial supply is not about luck, chance, or the economy. It is about alignment between spirit, belief, words, and purpose. When all four lock together, the flow of provision becomes almost inevitable. You stop chasing opportunities and begin attracting them. Doors that were once closed begin to open. People who never noticed you suddenly recognize your value. Ideas that once felt distant begin rising from within you. None of this happens by accident. It happens because spiritual law has been activated. This law teaches that you are never waiting for money. Money is waiting for you to align. When the heart expands, provision increases. When faith speaks boldly, resources accelerate. When purpose becomes clear, support appears. This is the untaught secret. Supernatural supply begins the moment you stop living from the outside in and start living from the inside out. The second layer of this hidden law of supernatural finances reveals that many people unknowingly sabotage their own increase by holding on to internal beliefs that contradict the outward actions they are taking. They work tirelessly, give sincerely, pray earnestly, and yet their inner dialogue is filled with thoughts that quietly deny the very results they hope to see. They say they believe in abundance, but worry dominates their mornings, and fear shadows their nights. They affirm that provision is coming, yet they imagine loss more vividly than breakthrough. This inner conflict creates a spiritual short circuit. The seed they sow in faith is uprooted by the doubt they rehearse in silence. The unseen realm is sensitive to the state of the heart, and it responds more powerfully to belief than to behavior. Even if you do everything correctly in the natural, the spiritual flow remains blocked when your inward expectation is shaped by fear. The hidden law teaches that the heart's posture is far more influential than the actions themselves. Provision flows where trust is strong, where expectation is alive, and where the inner narrative agrees with the promises being pursued. The moment a person shifts from fear-driven imagining to faith-driven expectation, the atmosphere around their life changes. Ideas begin to awaken, intuition sharpens, creative solutions emerge, and opportunities that once seemed invisible suddenly appear. This is because faith is not only a spiritual force, it is a perceptual force. It changes what you notice, what you respond to, and what you attract. The secret is not merely believing that increase is possible, but believing that it is already moving towards you. When your inner world becomes a place of confidence, gratitude, and expectation, the outer world begins to rearrange itself accordingly. This inner unity, where belief, imagination, and confession all point in the same direction, is the foundational requirement for supernatural provision to manifest consistently. The second part of this principle also teaches that provision is activated by movement. Faith without motion remains dormant, and many people remain stuck not because they lack vision, but because they lack bold action aligned with that vision. The hidden law states that spiritual supply responds to steps of obedience, not to passive wishing. When a person dares to step beyond their comfort zone, when they initiate a project, pursue an idea, or obey a prompting without seeing the full picture, they activate a higher realm of support. This movement signals that their faith is alive, and heaven responds accordingly. Opportunities begin to meet them halfway, partnerships form, resources gather, and solutions unfold that would have remained hidden had they stayed still. The supernatural often waits for human courage. When you move, doors you could not see from a distance begin to open. When you act, strength you did not know you had begins to rise within you. Provision is not attracted to hesitation. It is attracted to boldness. The mistake many make is waiting for everything to be clear before taking a step. But clarity often comes after movement, not before it. The moment a person begins to act in alignment with what they believe, whether through sowing, planning, speaking, or building, they signal to the unseen realm that they are ready for increase, and increase responds swiftly. In this way, spiritual provision becomes a partnership. The divine provides direction, power, and supply, while the individual provides faith, alignment, and action. When these forces meet, financial barriers crumble, hidden pathways open, and a person steps into a continuous flow of provision that is not dependent on the economy, the environment, or human approval. It becomes clear that the true limitation was never external. It was the unwillingness to align inward belief with outward action. When these two harmonize, the supernatural becomes natural, and increase becomes inevitable. The third dimension of this hidden law of supernatural finances reveals that the words a person speaks carry creative power, shaping not only their inner atmosphere but also the opportunities, relationships, and financial outcomes that surround their life. Many individuals unknowingly restrict their prosperity by speaking from a place of fear, shortage, or frustration, unaware that every statement becomes a seed planted into the unseen realm. Words are not mere sounds. They are signals, instructions, and declarations that frame the path ahead. When a person consistently speaks doubt, complains about lack, or repeats phrases of limitation, They build an environment where increase struggles to find expression. Conversely, when their mouth becomes aligned with faith, when they speak boldly about opportunity, provision, and purpose, the atmosphere around them begins to shift. The law is simple. The mouth reveals the posture of the heart, and the heart attracts results according to what it believes. A person's financial future is often shaped long before they ever handle money. It is shaped by the words they consistently allow to flow from their lips. These words either unlock or block the flow of supernatural provision. When a person speaks with conviction, when their declarations agree with their purpose, and when they refuse to allow external circumstances to dictate their confession, they activate a powerful spiritual law that pulls opportunities, ideas, and resources into their life. Speech becomes a creative force, and the unseen realm responds to that force with precision. At the same time, this hidden law teaches that powerful words must be supported by a renewed inner image. A person cannot speak abundance while imagining failure and expect consistent results. The internal picture held in the mind becomes the blueprint for the life that unfolds. Many people sabotage their increase not because they lack faith-filled words, but because the inner image they carry is shaped by past disappointments, generational beliefs, or years of surviving. Instead of thriving, if the imagination is filled with fear, shortage, or unworthiness, then the spoken words lose their strength because they are not supported by the inner picture. Supernatural provision flows most powerfully when the imagination is trained, disciplined, and aligned with the vision of abundance. The imagination must rehearse increase, not loss. It must visualize open doors, not closed ones. It must see opportunities, not obstacles. When the inner image shifts, the emotions follow, the confidence rises, and the external behavior aligns with that elevated vision. In this way, the imagination becomes a spiritual womb, carrying the seed of provision before it manifests in reality. The more clearly a person sees themselves walking in strength, success, generosity, and purpose, the more naturally their life begins moving toward those outcomes. This alignment of thought and speech becomes the engine of supernatural increase. The third part of this principle shows that consistent confession and aligned imagination create a magnetic field of expectation, and expectation determines the size of one's result. Some people expect little and therefore receive little. Others expect nothing and remain stuck in cycles of stagnation. But those who expect boldly, who prepare for opportunities before they appear, who speak increase before they see it, step into a dimension where provision begins to seek them out. Expectation is not wishful thinking. It is a confident state of the spirit that anticipates supply, solutions, and favor. This anticipation influences decisions, shapes behavior, and opens the mind to possibilities that would otherwise be ignored. Expectation sharpens perception, amplifies creativity, and draws resources into alignment. A person with strong expectation walks differently, responds differently, and sees differently because their eyes are fixed on what is coming rather than what is missing. The hidden law teaches that expectation is like a signal sent into the unseen realm, attracting the very outcomes that match its frequency. When expectation rises, life enlarges in response. When expectation is sustained, doors open with increasing ease. And when expectation is combined with purposeful action and persistent faith-filled speech, the flow of supernatural provision becomes constant and undeniable. Thus, the third dimension of this law is a reminder that increase is not something one chases. It is something one prepares for through the alignment of words, imagination, and expectation until the unseen becomes visible. The fourth dimension of this hidden law of supernatural finances reveals that purpose is the true engine behind provision. And until a person understands the relationship between their assignment and their supply, they will always feel as though their efforts fall short of their expectations. Financial increase does not manifest simply because someone desires more. It manifests because the increase has somewhere meaningful to flow. Money is attracted to clarity, direction, and intentionality. When a person has no clear sense of purpose, their energy becomes scattered, their decisions become inconsistent, and their actions lack the force that draws supernatural provision. Purpose brings alignment, and alignment brings supply. When you know what you are called to do, whether it is to build, create, help, teach, or lead, your inner life gains a sense of vision, and that vision becomes a magnet that pulls resources toward it. Just as water flows through channels rather than empty ground, provision flows through the channel of purpose. A life without purpose may receive temporary blessings, but a life anchored in purpose experiences continuous provision. This is why someone with strong direction often sees doors opening automatically, opportunities appearing unexpectedly, and help arriving at the perfect moment. Purpose activates divine timing and creates a flow that cannot be explained by logic alone. The second aspect of this principle teaches that purpose provides a framework for decision making, and wise decisions pave the road to supernatural increase. Many people struggle financially not because they lack faith, but because they make decisions that contradict their long-term vision. Purpose removes confusion. It filters distractions, strengthens discipline, and reveals what is worth pursuing and what must be released. When a person's choices are aligned with their purpose, their time becomes more valuable, their actions become more strategic, and their energy becomes more powerful. This clarity pushes away procrastination, doubt, and fear, because the mind becomes focused on something greater than momentary feelings. Purpose transforms routine actions into investments. The work that once felt ordinary becomes meaningful because it contributes to a larger vision. This mental and emotional alignment opens the door for supernatural favor, because heaven responds to intentionality. When your decisions honor your purpose, resources begin to honor your decisions. Mentors appear, partnerships form, ideas strengthen, and steps become guided with unusual precision. This orchestration is not accidental. It is a spiritual law reacting to a life that is moving with direction. The third aspect of this hidden law shows that purpose draws people helpers, supporters, partners, and even strangers who feel compelled to participate in your journey. Just as confusion isolates, purpose attracts. When your life radiates direction, others naturally recognize the clarity in your actions and feel inspired to contribute to your progress. This contribution may come in many forms: someone offering their expertise, another opening a door, another recommending you, another giving financial support, and another connecting you with opportunity you could never have found alone. People are drawn to purpose because it carries weight, focus, and momentum. The clearer your purpose becomes, the more magnetic your life becomes. The supernatural works through people, and when your purpose aligns with the right timing, individuals begin to show up in ways that feel almost orchestrated. These connections are part of provision. Many breakthroughs do not arrive as money. They arrive as people who accelerate your growth, sharpen your skills, or expand your influence. This is the hidden side of supernatural finances, the understanding that provision includes relationships, knowledge, favor, and opportunities, not just currency. When you honor your purpose, The right people begin to find you without you having to chase them. The fourth layer of this principle reveals that when a person lives in harmony with their purpose, they step into a supernatural flow where obstacles turn into stepping stones and challenges become catalysts for increase. Purpose gives meaning to adversity. Instead of stopping you, hardships sharpen you. Instead of weakening you, pressure strengthens you. Purpose teaches resilience, and resilience creates the capacity for greater provision. The unseen realm responds to those who refuse to give up, who remain anchored in their assignment even when circumstances seem unwilling to cooperate. This unwavering commitment signals maturity, and maturity attracts abundance. When a person is unshaken by delay, unbroken by disappointment, and unmoved by doubt, they become a vessel strong enough to carry larger blessings. Purpose gives a reason to persist, and persistence opens doors that talent alone could never unlock. In this state, provision begins to flow naturally, consistently, and increasingly, not because the journey is easy, but because the person has become aligned with who they are meant to be. In the fourth dimension of this law, it becomes clear that supply follows assignment, provision follows purpose, and abundance follows alignment. When your purpose becomes clear, your path becomes guided, your decisions become wise, your relationships become meaningful, and your provision becomes inevitable. The fifth dimension of this hidden law of supernatural finances teaches that supernatural provision often appears through channels that seem ordinary at first glance, yet these simple channels carry divine timing, divine strategy, and divine increase within them. Many people miss their breakthrough because they expect provision to arrive in dramatic, unmistakable ways, while the unseen realm often works through the daily moments they overlook. A small opportunity, a subtle idea, a quiet prompting, a chance conversation, or an unexpected connection can become the very doorway through which abundance enters a person's life. The hidden law emphasizes that nothing is accidental when a life is spiritually aligned. Every detail becomes part of a larger orchestration. What appears insignificant can hold the seed of major increase. This is why sensitivity to inner guidance becomes crucial. A gentle nudge to call someone, a sudden thought to start a project, or an inner urge to step into something unfamiliar may carry financial elevation wrapped in disguise. Those who cultivate awareness recognize that provision doesn't always come labeled. Sometimes it must be discerned. When a person remains alert, open, and responsive, they begin to notice the small signs that others overlook, and these signs become stepping stones into larger realms of provision. The second layer of this principle reveals that supernatural provision multiplies through stewardship, the wise, intentional handling of what a person already has. Many pray for increase, yet neglect the resources currently in their possession. The hidden law teaches that increase flows most naturally toward those who honor and manage what they already hold with excellence. Stewardship is not merely about budgeting or preserving. It is about cultivating, improving, maximizing, and valuing every resource, talent, relationship, and idea you possess. When you manage your time with discipline, your skills with dedication, your resources with wisdom, and your opportunities with seriousness, you signal readiness for greater responsibility. Provision follows readiness. The unseen realm recognizes when a person treats small things with honor, and such a person attracts larger things not by chance, but by spiritual consistency. Stewardship is evidence of maturity, and maturity invites increase. A person who multiplies what they have, even in small ways, activates the spiritual law that causes more to be drawn into their hands. They become a trustworthy vessel for abundance. The third aspect of this hidden law shows that supernatural provision accelerates when gratitude becomes a permanent posture of the heart. Gratitude is not just emotional appreciation, it is a spiritual force that expands capacity. A grateful person sees possibilities others cannot see. They notice doors others walk past. They recognize blessings others ignore. This heightened awareness increases their ability to receive, because they continually acknowledge the value of what they have. Gratitude attracts abundance because it keeps the heart open, expectant, and aligned with increase. Complaining, on the other hand, closes the door to provision. When a person focuses on problems, needs, or limitations, they magnify lack and diminish their ability to perceive opportunity. Gratitude reverses that focus. It shifts attention toward what is working, what is growing, and what is possible. This shift releases joy, strengthens faith, and expands vision. A grateful heart becomes a fertile ground where ideas flourish, confidence grows, and solutions develop naturally. As gratitude deepens, provision multiplies, not because gratitude manipulates the supernatural, but because it positions the heart to receive without resistance. The more grateful a person becomes, the more clearly they see the pathways to abundance. The fourth component of this principle explains that supernatural provision often requires endurance, an inner strength that refuses to bow to discouragement, delay, or opposition. While some breakthroughs arrive suddenly, others unfold gradually, testing the depth of a person's patience and the sincerity of their belief. Many give up just before the increase would have manifested, abandoning their efforts because the timing did not match their expectations. The hidden law teaches that endurance is the doorway to long-term, stable provision. Endurance builds character, sharpens discernment, and solidifies identity. It transforms a person into someone who can handle greater responsibility without collapsing under pressure. When a person remains steadfast, continuing to sow, speak, act, and believe even when results seem distant, they demonstrate spiritual maturity, and that maturity calls forth greater provision. Endurance is not passive waiting, it is active persistence. It is the decision to remain consistent, to continue building, to keep improving, and to maintain faith despite delays. This persistence sends a signal into the unseen realm that the person is prepared, committed, and ready for sustained increase. The fifth layer of this hidden law teaches that supernatural provision flows most strongly when a person's life becomes a conduit rather than a container. Those who see increase as something to accumulate often limit the flow, but those who see increase as something to circulate experience continuous supply. Generosity is not merely giving. It is participation in a divine cycle where resources move through you and return multiplied. A generous spirit creates space for more to enter. It opens pathways of favor, strengthens relationships, and establishes trust in both spiritual and natural realms. When a person uses their resources, whether time, money, wisdom, or encouragement, to uplift others, they activate a law of return that cannot be replicated through selfish accumulation. Generosity declares that fear does not govern your life, and this declaration attracts supernatural support. The more freely a person gives, the more freely they receive, not out of obligation, but because they have aligned with a universal principle. What flows out must return, and what circulates grows. In this way, provision becomes not merely a blessing but a lifestyle, a continuous stream that enriches both the giver and those they touch. The sixth dimension of this hidden law of supernatural finances reveals that the environment in which a person surrounds themselves plays a powerful role in determining the flow, strength, and Consistency of provision. Environment is not only physical, it includes emotional atmosphere, daily influences, routines, relationships, and even the internal climate of one's thoughts. Many people fail to recognize that abundance struggles to grow in an environment dominated by negativity, fear, constant complaining, or chaos. Just as healthy plants need the right soil and climate to flourish, the seeds of supernatural provision require an environment that nurtures growth. This environment is created through intentional choices, choosing what you listen to, who you spend time with, what you meditate on, and how you manage your time. When the environment is filled with inspiration, clarity, discipline, and positivity, the spirit becomes more receptive to guidance, creativity expands, and faith becomes stronger. But when the environment is cluttered with confusion, procrastination, pessimism, and doubt, even the strongest intentions begin to weaken. The hidden law teaches that a person must build an environment that matches the level of provision they desire. If the environment remains small, the results remain small. When the environment expands, the flow of provision expands with it. The second aspect of this law emphasizes that relationships are a major component of one's environment. The people you keep close influence your confidence, your decisions, and the quality of your thoughts. Relationships can either be ladders that lift you into higher dimensions of provision or anchors that pull you back into cycles of limitation. Some individuals remain stuck financially because they are surrounded by people who speak negatively, think narrowly, or live in fear. Their environment becomes a cage that limits possibility. The hidden law teaches that supernatural provision manifests more easily when relationships are aligned with purpose, vision, and faith. Supportive relationships challenge you to grow, inspire you to act, and encourage you to see beyond your current limitations. They reinforce belief rather than feeding doubt. The right people energize your purpose, strengthen your creativity, and help you recognize opportunities. On the other hand, relationships rooted in jealousy, negativity, or scarcity, thinking weaken your spirit and disrupt the flow of provision. To step into greater abundance, a person must protect their relational environment with discernment, surrounding themselves with individuals who uplift, inspire, and share a mindset of growth. The third component highlights that routines and habits shape the environment of the mind and directly influence the manifestation of supernatural provision. A person who lives without structure, discipline, or intentional daily practices often drifts into mental and emotional states that resist increase. But a person who establishes routines that support vision, such as reading, planning, quiet reflection, gratitude, skill development, or intentional rest, creates an environment where clarity thrives and provision flows. Habits shape identity. When daily habits align with purpose, they produce consistency, and consistency produces momentum. This momentum becomes a spiritual force that attracts opportunities, guidance, and resources. The hidden law teaches that you do not rise to the level of your intentions. You rise to the level of your habits. A disciplined environment communicates readiness to the unseen realm. When you show that you can govern your time, your emotions, and your responsibilities, provision begins to recognize you as a trustworthy steward. This strengthens your ability to receive, expand, and maintain increase. The fourth part of this principle reveals that mental environment, your inner thoughts, imagination, and emotional patterns, acts as the command center of provision. Even if a person's external environment is positive, if their inner world is filled with fear, anxiety, or self-doubt, the flow of supernatural provision becomes restricted. Thoughts carry power, and emotional patterns create spiritual signals. A mind saturated with worry sends out a frequency that attracts more lack, while a mind filled with calm expectation draws in solutions and opportunities. The hidden law teaches that inner peace is not a luxury. It is a requirement for sustained provision. When the mind becomes still, focused, and hopeful, inner wisdom emerges, intuition becomes sharper, and divine guidance can be heard clearly. This clarity leads to decisions and actions that align with the path of increase. The internal environment must be cultivated with the same care as the external world. Through meditation, reflection, affirmation, and intentional mental discipline, a healthy inner environment empowers a person to stand firm in faith, even when circumstances appear uncertain. The fifth layer emphasizes that removing environmental clutter, both internal and external, is essential for maintaining a clear channel for provision. Clutter creates confusion, drains energy, and weakens focus. It blinds a person to opportunities that may be right in front of them. Clearing clutter makes space for new ideas, new strategies, and new levels of provision. This includes decluttering physical spaces, releasing emotional baggage, distancing from draining relationships, and letting go of outdated beliefs. When clutter is removed, energy increases, clarity deepens, and the flow of provision becomes smoother. The hidden law teaches that you cannot receive new abundance while holding onto old limitations. Space must be made before increase arrives. By actively releasing what no longer serves your purpose, you create an environment where supernatural provision can land, take root, and multiply. The sixth dimension concludes with the understanding that environment is both a mirror and a magnet. It reflects the level of belief a person currently holds, and it attracts the level of provision that matches that belief. If your environment reflects small thinking, disorder, or stagnation, that is the level of provision it will draw. But if your environment reflects purpose, discipline, clarity, and expectation, it becomes a magnet for greater opportunities. When you intentionally design the atmosphere of your life, internally and externally, you align yourself with the flow of supernatural provision. You create a world where ideas thrive, confidence grows, creativity strengthens, and resources respond. In this way, the sixth dimension reminds us that abundance is not only something you pursue, it is something you prepare for through the environment you create every single day. The seventh dimension of this hidden law of supernatural finances reveals that supernatural provision reaches its highest expression when a person learns to operate from a posture of alignment, surrender, and spiritual sensitivity, living in such a way that every decision, intention, and action flows from a deeper awareness rather than mere human effort. Many individuals pursue increase with intensity, but without internal alignment, and as a result, they exhaust themselves while seeing little progress. True provision is not forced, it is received. It is not created through striving, it is unlocked through alignment. This alignment begins with the understanding that you are not the source, you are the vessel. When a person releases the pressure to create results by their own strength, and instead learns to listen, follow, and obey the subtle guidance available to them, they step into a rhythm where provision flows naturally. This rhythm transforms stress into clarity, panic into peace, and frustration into expectancy. The hidden law teaches that supernatural provision becomes effortless not when life becomes easier, but when the individual becomes more aligned with the inner guidance that leads them step by step. This alignment allows a person to walk in confidence even when the path seems uncertain, because they understand that they are not moving alone. This seventh dimension also emphasizes the importance of timing, recognizing that not every opportunity, idea, or action will bear fruit if pursued outside its appointed season. Many people struggle financially because they act prematurely or delay excessively. Supernatural provision is deeply connected to timing, and timing is best discerned through inner sensitivity. There are moments when movement is necessary and moments when stillness is strategic. There are seasons designed for building and seasons designed for receiving. A person who develops the ability to sense the right moment to act steps into a flow where their efforts multiply with ease. This timing creates acceleration progress that takes months instead of years, breakthroughs that appear suddenly, and doors that open without force. But this timing cannot be detected through logic alone. It requires a spirit that is attentive, quiet, and receptive. When a person learns to synchronize their actions with divine timing, they begin to experience results that are disproportionate to their effort. Because timing turns simple steps into powerful outcomes, another layer of this principle reveals that surrender is not a passive withdrawal, but an active willingness to release control over the parts of life you cannot manipulate. Many individuals block provision not because they lack faith, but because they cling tightly to their own plans, fears, or expectations. Surrender is the ability to let go of anxiety, release the need for constant certainty, and trust that provision is being orchestrated even when the evidence is not yet visible. Surrender frees the mind from unnecessary pressure and opens space for inspiration, creativity, and wisdom. When you stop fighting the process begins to work for you. The hidden law teaches that provision comes most naturally to those who are not enslaved by fear, who do not obsess over outcomes, and who refuse to let their emotions dictate their decisions. This form of surrender creates inner stability, and inner stability invites outer abundance. It allows a person to move through life with calm confidence, making choices from strength rather than desperation. The seventh dimension also explains that supernatural provision strengthens when a person develops a lifestyle of listening to intuition, listening to inner promptings, listening to the quiet wisdom that speaks beneath the noise of daily life. Most breakthroughs do not shout, they whisper. Many solutions do not arrive dramatically, they come as gentle ideas. Most doors do not open suddenly, they nudge. Those who cultivate the ability to listen through reflection, stillness, and inner awareness gain access to guidance that others overlook. This guidance reveals the right steps, the right partnerships, the right strategies, and even the right moments to pause. Listening protects a person from costly mistakes and positions them to recognize opportunities early. It sharpens discernment so that you can distinguish between distractions and genuine doors of increase. When a person lives with this heightened awareness, they walk a path that feels guided, supported, and strategically aligned with provision. This dimension also highlights that supernatural provision multiplies when a person embraces personal transformation as part of their financial journey. Increase is not just about acquiring more, it is about becoming more. Many people desire abundance without understanding that abundance requires capacity, and capacity is developed through growth. Transformation is the process through which a person becomes capable of carrying greater responsibility, managing larger opportunities, and sustaining long-term success. Growth may require letting go of old behaviors, healing from past limitations, expanding mental horizons, or developing new skills. When a person commits to becoming better, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and practically, they create a vessel that can hold greater provision. Transformation is not merely self-improvement, it is preparation. It aligns the inner world with the future one desires. When a person grows internally, externally, the world begins to match that growth. Another element of the seventh dimension explains that supernatural provision operates most freely when a person lives with expectancy rather than survival. Survival narrows vision, restricts creativity, and reduces faith. Expectancy expands imagination, strengthens determination, and stimulates inspired action. A life governed by survival reacts to circumstances. A life anchored in expectancy anticipates breakthrough even when circumstances seem unimpressive. Expectancy keeps the heart open, the spirit energized, and the mind alert to possibility. It shifts attention from fear of loss to readiness for increase. This readiness primes a person to recognize opportunities quickly and respond with boldness rather than hesitation. Expectancy positions a person not as a victim of life's conditions, but as a participant in the unfolding of provision. The final layer of this seventh dimension reveals that supernatural provision reaches fullness when a person's life becomes aligned with purpose, governed by peace, guided by inner sensitivity, and sustained by continual growth. At this level, provision is no longer a pursuit. It becomes a natural expression of alignment. Doors open with ease, opportunities appear with precision, and resources gather with purpose. You begin to experience a life where you are not chasing provision. Provision is meeting you according to the flow you have created. This seventh dimension teaches that abundance is not an accident, but a result of living with intention, awareness, surrender, discipline, and faith. When all these elements work together, provision becomes constant, consistent, and ever-increasing, transforming the financial landscape of a person's life from unpredictable struggle to guided, thriving flow.